Yeah, what is up, everybody? Happy Monday. Ginger Runner Live episode number 175 begins now. Tonight's episode is, it's an episode that I've been waiting to do for a long time. Last 5 months at minimum, but our guest tonight, I've wanted to have on the show much longer than that. He's what I want to aspire to be, this guy, because he's one of the kindest people I've ever met. He's also an incredible athlete, but the project that he just completed, which we'll talk about on tonight's show, is special, and we'll find out why it's special to him, why he did it, maybe what he's taken from it. It's all still very fresh because he just finished it at the beginning of this month. It was the Trans Americana is what he's calling it, basically running across America. Our guest tonight is Rickey Gates. I don't want to do this pre-show too long because I just want to get right into it. I'm just excited to find out more about the adventure and why he chose to do it and all that good stuff. So welcome, everybody, to Ginger Runner Live episode number 175. We have Rickey Gates on tonight to talk all about Trans Americana. Very excited. Here we go. Ginger Runner. Yay, what's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to spend it with us tonight. Tonight's episode is very special.
I feel like it's already one of my favorite episodes, and we haven't even started.
We haven't even started the episode. It's already one of our favorites. Our guest tonight, we've got a chance to meet him in person a couple of times, and every time we do, Kim and I always leave the party or the conversation or whatever it is, and we're like, I love Rickey Gates. I want to be Rickey Gates. We both say that.
That's mostly me.
That's mostly Kim. We are lucky to have him on the show tonight. He just completed probably one of the most epic projects that I've heard of, and it's been a joy to follow him through this incredible journey. I can't begin to imagine the amount of stories that he has. We're going to try to get to some of them tonight. We have a very limited amount of time to try to encapsulate 5 months of journey, but we'll do our best. Of course, before we even introduce our guest, I want to make sure that I introduce Kim.
Hi guys, I'm Kim. I'll be in the chat room as always. So if you're new to Ginger Runner Live, we pull live viewer questions throughout the hour. So if you guys have questions for Rickey, ask them in the chat room. And I've already pulled a huge list of questions,
which is awesome. I know that we're going to have a lot of questions for our guest tonight. And of course, I want to also thank Brian Sands for making Ginger Runner Live happen for the month of August now as well. He was our premier sponsor on Patreon for the month of July and now through August as well. So Brian Sands, big shout out to you, my friend. And Brian is training for his very first marathon. Last week, we talked about how he just completed his very first long 20-plus mile run. He crushed it. He did great. He's well on his way to complete his first marathon. We're going to follow him along this journey over the coming weeks. So it's awesome to have him as a premier sponsor and to give him a shout out and to tell a little bit about his story, because he's already lost 100+ pounds, I believe, at this point. And it's inspiring to runners of all levels. And it will be great to talk to him down the road here as well. Okay, without further ado, no more talking from me. I want to introduce him. It's special to have him on the show. Here he is, Mr. Rickey Gates. Rickey Gates!
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
It's nice to see you guys, too. I didn't get to say it's nice to see you guys before the show, but it's nice to see you guys. I think the last time was at Dom and Katie's wedding.
I think so.
It was. And I think that's when, I don't know if you had talked about doing Trans Americana at that point, but I know that you mentioned to us that you had projects in the works. Was this one of them at that time? That was last year.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, this is something that I've been thinking about for probably 20 years and actively organizing for the past 2 years. So for sure, if I was mentioning something and being a little cagey about what it might be, then this is it.
The last thing, as I guess a journalist, I obviously want to ask the questions of like, oh, what is it that Rickey has planned? But at the same point, I like the surprise of reading, oh my God, Rickey just started a Trans Americana journey. I have to know, and I feel like I've heard through other people, mutual friends, about maybe why you started this journey. Was there a particular reason or timing as to why you chose to do it this year at this point in time? What was it that that made you really want to do it now?
So it was quite a few things. First of all, I'm not getting younger. I've been enjoying racing for the past, for Solomon for about the past 8 years. And then much more before that. So I've been racing now for 20 years, and always kind of trying to figure out how to make the sport new and interesting to me. So, you know, in high school, that's cross country and track, and then college, you know, competition, and then finding mountain races and trail races in Europe, and then getting into ultra races about 7 years ago. And then I was wanting to get to these races in a unique manner, and so that would be motorcycles and bicycles, and kind of running out of things to do and ways to reinvent racing. This has kind of been a big bucket list thing that's been on my plate for a really long time. And so the real inception of doing this project, I would say, was probably about 20 years ago when I read a book called A Walk Across America, which I think a lot of us have read. It's kind of in a way, a coming-of-age story of a guy back in the 1960s, 70s that was a little bit disenchanted and wanted to get to know his own country a little bit better. And it's a book that I read when I was probably 16 years old, so 20 years ago, and was deeply affected by, and I've always kind of wanted to do something similar myself. We're certainly living in a interesting political climate right now, very diverse, that didn't necessarily have anything to do with me wanting to do this, but when you know, everything got heated up last year and continues to be so, I knew that it was gonna make my trip much more interesting. So yeah, that's kind of the quick version of how it all came about.
It's interesting that you mentioned that book and kind of those origins. I'm not even going to try to compare to what you just accomplished, but at the same point earlier this year, I realized that there's so much about this country and the people in it that I don't know. It's obvious, even if people have varying opinions and backgrounds and stuff, it's clear now to see that there's this separation. And it was my first trip to the Southeast this year, and it was an amazing experience to meet just some of the most incredible people that I've ever had the chance to meet. Have you got to experience much of varying pockets of America, or have you kind of been stationed on the West Coast and kind of lived the West Coast life? And have you been able to live elsewhere in the United States, or was this your first real experience getting a chance to see the diversity across the country?
So I'm from Colorado originally, and let's see, I've lived in Colorado. I lived in San Francisco for a little while. Traveled a lot throughout the West and the Southwest, a little bit in the Pacific Northwest, a couple times out to New England, New York. But there's, as I'm painting this picture, and then living in Wisconsin for the past few years, as I'm painting this picture, there's a huge dark spot, like unknown spot in the country, and that's the South for me. And I think that is for a lot of us. And so that was really one of the biggest things. Like if this trip had have ended at the Mississippi River or on the border of Arkansas and Oklahoma, like, to be honest, I think I would have been okay with that. It was so informative to me and such a rich experience to go by foot throughout the South and meet some of the kindest, most wonderful people that we have in this country. So that was the main thing as far as like designing the route went, was really wanting to see some of these areas that I haven't been before, and the South being at the very top of that list.
We are getting a lot of questions from our live viewers, so I want to make sure that we, of course, get to some of those. While we get to one of those first questions from our live audience, those of you who are watching live or maybe listening in the archive, or maybe you catch this tomorrow, do us a favor and pull up Instagram.com/Rickey Gates, R-I-C-K-E-Y Gates, G-A-T-E-S. As we start to talk more about this journey, you're going to want to pull some of these images up. Rickey did a fantastic job documenting through imagery and the occasional video in his Instagram feed the entire journey. And I know that eventually be seeing some sort of movie or film project from Jared and the Wandering Fever crew at some point. But it's going to be a fascinating way to put imagery to maybe some of those stories that we hear. So go ahead and do yourself a favor, open up a new tab and pull that up as we start to go forward.
I was going to say, I think that Ricky's Instagram handle has been one that we've shared the most with our non-running friends.
100%.
That have like really appreciated it as well.
Yeah, there's rarely an Instagram feed that I'll send to my parents because it's either like cabin porn or mountainscapes, and my parents are like, "Oh, these are really cool views." But in this case, like Rickey Gates' feed was one of those.
Stories that go with the pictures.
We would tell people who aren't runners or our comedian friends or actor friends. I'm like, you gotta follow this guy. And Rickey, I hope you got 1 million more followers because of us. It was so worth it to follow, or at least 10. But let's get to some of these live questions.
Somewhere between 10 and 1 million. So I think
great.
Yeah.
You're welcome. What do we got?
Question from Nathaniel in the chat room. Rickey, across the states, you get to see America's diversity firsthand. Was there one person you met who stands out?
There was a lot of people that stood out. There was one person in particular that I met in Oklahoma, in Oklahoma on the Osage Indian Reservation, so northeastern Oklahoma. His name's Kevin Wilson. I did put a picture of him up there. I'm guessing that would be around mid-April is when that would have been. And this is a guy, so to give you a little background, the night before I'd slept out. Everything that I had for this trip was in my backpack, which was a 10 to 12 pound base weight. And so that my sleeping system was simply a tarp, a very compact sleeping pad, sleeping bag, and a tarp going over my head. And so that worked well for a sprinkle or for dew. It warmed up a little bit under the tarp, but for 3 inches of that rain, 3 inches of rain that fell in Oklahoma the night before, I was literally sleeping in a puddle of standing water, and there was really no way to get out of that. So next day I went into town and was just looking for a dry place to sleep under a bridge. There wasn't any real bridge to sleep under. There wasn't any hotel. And I just asked the lady behind the counter if she had any, if she knew where I could possibly sleep. And this guy standing behind me in line, he looks at me and he says, "Well, you're staying with me." And I'm like, okay. And he's got this big long goatee and braided hair and tattoos on his hands and scars on his arms. And he goes out into his pickup, and while he's out there, I just kind of asked the lady behind the counter if he's all right. And she's like, "Oh, that's Kevin. He talks a lot, but he's a good guy." And he came back inside and he says, you just gotta, you can't steal anything, and you gotta be all right with dealing with my brother's dogs and a crazy squirrel. And I'm thinking this is a squirrel that lives in the attic or comes and goes from the house, but we get back to his house and it's actually a squirrel in a cage living in the house there. There's dogs everywhere. It's easily one of the most biohazard danger sites I've ever been in my life. It was, if the guy wasn't so colorful, I probably would have gone for sleeping in the rain again that night. But he was just full of stories. He talked for about 4 hours straight that night, and I just got his entire life story, which was really quite beautiful. A lot of tragedy, and there was nothing bringing the guy down. He was just, he was just really cool, and hands down one of those people that there's no way I would have met him and had this rich experience if I'd have not been in the situation that I was, kind of putting myself out there, going by land and looking for a place to sleep, and just extremely generous. So that was Kevin Wilson, north. It's all kind of blending together now. Northeastern Oklahoma.
It seemed to be kind of a common theme that I found most fascinating was you would form these relationships with strangers. It's based off of your stories purely on Instagram, because that was kind of our direct connection to what you were going through. Mm-hmm. I guess we would have been a day or two maybe behind, depending on when you posted the photos, but it seemed to be kind of this through line that you would encounter these perfect strangers but they would be immediately giving or understanding of the circumstance. I can't imagine what it would be like to come across you running on the side of a road with a backpack in the middle of what I'm assuming is nowhere in a lot of cases, but then opening their homes to you, and for you to also be going into strangers' homes. Were you ever concerned at any point? Were they ever concerned? Like, did that conversation ever come up of like, I didn't think I was going to take you into my home, or I didn't think I was going to enter your home? Like, did that ever come up?
I would say that it came up somewhat frequently. I was asked a couple times by people bringing me into their house if I was carrying any weapon, and of course I wasn't. Even if I was the type to carry a weapon, they weigh too much for my luggage that I was carrying, and I suppose a little bit vice versa. But I was thinking about this today and how I kind of subconsciously made a decision at the beginning of this trip that I just wasn't going to be afraid of anybody or any animal. I think that there's weather systems and there's other factors to be aware of doing something like this, but it would have been a completely different experience, this trip, if I'd have been thinking about that the entire time. And it was amazing to me that I could actually just kind of like come to that decision, and then all of a sudden, like, okay, I'm not afraid of anybody or any animals, so like, why would I need protection? And it just it opened up a lot of doors for me. You know, anytime anyone did ask me if I was carrying a gun or a knife or whatever, I just ask them, you know, why would I need that? And they come up with all of these reasons: dangerous people, dangerous animals. And I'm like, well, I haven't actually seen that this entire time. I've been, you know, out here for quite a while now, and I've only encountered really great people. And I know that there's bad people out there, and there's possibly reasons to be afraid, but I don't know. I'd rather err on the side of not. I'm gonna close that down. Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I think that's really cool, because I think in today's society, with our technology that we have, it's really easy to close yourself off, or like not even make eye contact with somebody that you're not familiar with, let alone, you know, get into a conversation and get that ball rolling. So that's something that's really cool.
I'm fascinated by it, you know, because I can talk about my comforts and my fears, and what I found refreshing about this experience is that you went head on to all of those things. You know, like, I would be afraid of encountering wildlife out in the woods, and I know that the route that you chose was was there a specific reason to the route that you chose? Was it more kind of each day you would choose a different path to go? Was that one of the questions?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in the chat room just wondering about logistics and how you planned out your route. Yeah,
because it seemed organic. It seemed really organic.
So yeah, I did plan out the route more or less beforehand. I wanted to hit as many trails as possible.
Okay.
Sorry, my mom's texting me. I'm trying to I might just text her to tell her to stop texting me. We'll see if that happens. But so I wanted to hit as many trails as possible. I wanted to start in the South. I wanted to finish in San Francisco. I lived here for 3 years. I've got a lot of friends here, and I knew that it was going to be a great time crossing the Golden Gate Bridge with the San Francisco Running Company crew and a lot of my good friends here. I wanted to go through my hometown of Aspen, Colorado. So you've got like 6 trails that I knew about beforehand: the South, San Francisco, and hitting home. And then otherwise, it was a matter of connecting the dots. And so every day it was like when I get off the Ozark Highlands Trail, I'm in, what is that called? Fort Lake Smith, Arkansas. And my next spot that I wanted to go to was the Colorado Trail. So that's like 800 miles. You put that in Google Maps and it tells you how to walk there. And, you know, maybe it's avoiding Wichita or something like that. And I wanted to go through Wichita, so I'd adjusted a little bit. But yeah, I would say with the exception of planning those specific ones beforehand, it was pretty organic throughout, if you want to call Google organic. But it through a lot of amazing places, that's for sure. And I also kind of figured, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, it's got you going through that part of town or that part of the state. Like, oh, that's a terrible part of the state. And I'm like, well, have you ever walked through that part of the state or that part of town? And they're like, no, why would you? I'm like, well, I'm going to go find out. And, you know, come out with some great stories, go to places where not even the locals are really going. So
that's what I love about this journey. That's what I love about it, is because you're doing things that most normal people would just not do, you know, and I love that. I love it.
You're mentioning that your mom is texting you right now. Speaking of your mom, did she have any reservations of you doing this project? Was she nervous?
Well, she wasn't nervous initially because maybe she thought I wasn't actually going to do it. And then when it started, she was, yeah, she didn't say a whole lot about it. I know she wasn't nervous. I think she just didn't really understand what it was that I was doing. And then as the trip went on, she got more and more psyched about it. And then as I got into the desert, she got really worried, and and understandably so. It's a super harsh climate. I feel like in a little way I'm still recovering from it, at least mentally. Yeah, so no, I had mostly support from my family and friends, and a little bit of apprehension here and there, but it was yeah, it was all good. I did get to see my mom a few times throughout. She came out to eastern Colorado and we spent a day together. She happened to be going through Ely, Nevada. Oh, there she is.
This is Ricky's mom, yeah.
Yeah, treating me to breakfast. And I saw her in Ely, Nevada, and then she flew out for the finish in San Francisco, and lent her my girlfriend's bike. She biked across the bridge. We lost her in San Francisco. I had like 30 runners helping me find my mom in San Francisco. It's one way to finish a trip.
But you found her.
Yep.
Okay, good. Did she go back to Aspen?
Back home safe. Yep.
Okay, good. You brought up a couple points that I wanted to make sure I touched on tonight as well, as far as safety and weather and the deserts, because I know that it sounded like probably one of the most difficult parts of the journey. What were some of the difficult aspects of this journey? Maybe from the beginning, did you encounter things that you didn't expect you would encounter early on, or you know, were you always worried about the desert later on, or kind of what were the big challenges that you faced?
So let's see. They were all kind of standard. I wouldn't say boring by any means, but they're the challenges that you would expect, and blisters right off the bat, and that was for the first couple weeks. And then I got them again, some pretty bad blisters through the Ozarks, just because it was so wet through there. And then kind of the mental challenge of going across Kansas. It was extremely beautiful, like going through those cornfields and just seeing a part of American industry or agriculture that most of us just fly over if we're lucky. I mean lucky in the sense that we get to travel, not lucky because we're not going across it by land. But yeah, it was a huge challenge going across Kansas and just seeing these straightaways, and you see a silo 6-7 miles off in the distance, and that takes you an hour and a half to get to at the pace that I was going, and then just beyond that silo, there's another silo 6 miles off, and it's kind of like Mario Kart, like for days and weeks. You know, you've got the little thing on the horizon coming towards you, and so that was a new challenge mentally for me. And then the desert was definitely the biggest challenge of the trip, physically and mentally. And that was dealing with 100-degree temps constantly, learning how to adjust my schedule, so that I was, for a little while there, running straight through the night. And for the rest of the trip, getting up 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, running till noon, going to sleep or trying to go to sleep for a few hours in the afternoon in some shade, and then getting going again in the evening, and then running till midnight. So yeah, it was certainly a challenge. And then if anyone's ever driven Highway 50 or biked it or run it, you know that there's stretches of road that are 13, 14, 15 miles long. And, you know, yeah, it messes with your brain seeing that far out ahead. It's really challenging.
I can imagine having had other guests on the show who have run across the country, they talk about the desert as well as being an incredible mental hurdle, because you do see a destination so far off, but the time it takes to get there. So you knew the desert was going to be a challenge well ahead of you actually reaching it, correct?
Yes, I did know that it was going to be a challenge. What I didn't do is really prepare myself mentally for it, and I don't know how much of a difference that would have made to prepare myself mentally for it. If I would have just dreaded it beforehand, or if it would have actually helped me. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of personal growth going on there. Yeah, I didn't know how I was going to get across the desert. I knew that I was going to need a lot of water. I didn't know how I was going to carry that water. I found a silly little golf stroller in the thrift shop in Moab for $6, and I carried water in my gear with that for 100 miles, almost 200 miles, and then a friend sent out a baby stroller, and you know, all of these things just kind of come together so organically that it's. I think in retrospect, I'm glad that I didn't prepare any more than I did for it. You know, it all just kind of works out in the end.
Yeah, we have lots of live questions. Let's get to some of those.
Yeah, a question from Billy Satterwhite in the chat room. You were just talking about some of the mental hurdles. Billy asked, what were some of the low patches you hit, and what are some of the things you did to keep yourself going when things got tough?
Low patches, yeah. I mean, the main ones were in the desert, and what did I don't know. At that point, you know, so in the desert, I was doing about 40 miles, 35 to 40 miles a day, and some 48-mile days. And as I said, waking up super early, going till the temperature was about 95 degrees, and then trying to find some shade, oftentimes in a culvert beneath the road. And one of the harder parts, one of the bigger challenges, was actually just spending time beneath the road with nothing. You know, I didn't have a book. If I had a book, I don't think I'd have really been able to read it. That was almost 4 months into the trip at that point, and your capacity to kind of take in someone else's journey, or to try and even escape from where you are and go somewhere else, it's really challenging. So it was that was probably the biggest challenge, was just kind of waiting that out. And so I've got a recent background in meditation, and it didn't really occur to me that until about halfway through the desert, that this is like this is meditation. This is what you practice for. This is you know, there's no distractions around you. How do you deal with just yourself and your brain, and time? You know, so I'm still trying to figure out how I got through it. I think by that point in the trip, I was so much on automatic, and like, yeah, the, you know, possibility of failure, just, it wasn't even in my periphery at that point. So it's just, yeah, kind of machine-like. So I don't know if I have a good answer for that.
I think that's a great answer, because I think it's in my mind, it's kind of what I expected too, is you probably turn into autopilot at some point. Like you said, kind of a machine, just going through the motions of getting through certain lows and long points. I wanted to talk a little bit about logistics, because we're getting tons of questions regarding logistics. Did you set out with a specific mileage per day, or was it, again, in that organic sense of, if I get 20 or 30 today, that's fine, or a 0 day or whatever? And then also, people are really curious as what you did for nutrition. Did you give yourself the leeway of stopping at restaurants, or, you know, a 7-Eleven or something to get whatever calories you needed? Or did you carry, you know, dehydrated meals, and were you self-sufficient for multiple days, or how did that work for you?
So let's see, in planning for the trip, I've done quite a few long trips in the past, never a running or hiking trip like this, but bike trips, motorcycle trips. I know that the 5-month window, the 5-month time frame there has worked really well for me. I start to get tired at 4 months, you know, and then it's kind of like the last lap of the mile. That last month, you're just kind of powering through, and you have a chance to reflect on it a little bit. And so that 5 months was really important. I'd planned that from the very beginning, hoping that this would take me 5 months, and then just doing a little bit of math, figuring that the route that I was going to take, if you go straight across the country, you can do it in less than 3,000 miles. And given the turns and the trails and all of the stuff that I wanted to do, I added on another 20% or so, which brought it up to like 35 to 4,000 miles. And then I divided that by 5 months, and that was a marathon a day, almost to the 10th of a mile, amazingly.
Wow.
My running days altogether, it was 27 miles a day. And then in practice, a short day would be about 20 miles, and a long day would be close to 50 miles, over 40 miles to 50 miles. And that's just how it ended up working out. And I did manage that 5-month time frame. And then as far as the nutrition is concerned, yeah, there was absolutely no nutrition on this trip. It was, being that it was self-supported, I just had to go with whatever I was finding around me. And for a whole lot of the trip, that was gas station to gas station. So yeah, you develop cravings. It's probably as close as I'll ever get to having the feeling of being a pregnant woman, and the cravings that they talk about, and you're just going down the aisle, and you're not even like, you're just grabbing, and you're just trusting it. Like your hand is going for what you need. And so that was chocolate milk, ice cream. By the time I got to the desert, that was chocolate milk, ice cream, like salted cashews, if they had them, a lot of gummy-O's. So yeah, just like so much junk food. But then also treating myself to a cafe, ideally as often as I could, because that was super important to me to hang out with people in the morning and talk to them, or at a burger joint in the evening, and up at the bar, and yeah, I don't consider myself a super social person, but like doing something like this and just being genuinely interested in everybody and every place that I go to, it was like, yeah, just talk to and you're out there all by yourself all day long, so you get into a cafe or a bar in the evening, and you just want to talk to everybody. So and then doing what I was doing, everyone kind of wants to talk to you as well.
I can imagine that you were a hit at some of the bars and places that you would probably stop at. I bet people were fascinated by this guy running across America.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that it wasn't just a running journey for you. You also paddleboarded a large section of it, which I find fascinating. Was there a reason behind doing that, or was it just like hey, it would be really cool to go down? Was it the Mississippi, or there was various rivers that you went down, right?
I went down 2 rivers. The main one that took the most amount of time was the Tennessee River. And I started in Chattanooga, Tennessee, went down clear across the northern part of Alabama, and then back into Tennessee. And the reason for that, I mean, I've been down a few rivers in the past 10 years. I've done the Grand Canyon a few times. But the main reason that I wanted to do it on this trip is actually more historical, kind of an effort to make this a nod to history as well, and the expansion of the United States. And in that sense, you know, whenever in U.S. history, or in world history for that matter, if you can take advantage of a river going your direction, then you do so. And so, you know, Lewis and Clark, they took the I believe it was the Mississippi and the Missouri, or just the Missouri, for I think 1,000 miles upstream before going on land. And there's a lot of different stories about people in the 16, 17, 1800s taking advantage of the river. So I looked at that on the map, and I saw that the Tennessee River was going my direction for several hundred miles. And I'd planned on getting to Chattanooga and finding a kayak or a canoe, and just buying it off of Craigslist and cruising down. When I got there, someone had suggested a stand-up paddleboard, which I'd never done before, and then another person nearby said that he would lend me one for my trip, and then another person offered to drive the 10 days out, 300 miles away, and pick up the paddleboard and bring it back to Chattanooga. So it was like, wow. Pull into Chattanooga, and like very next day, I'm on a stand-up paddleboard floating down the river. So yeah, it was amazing. It was very challenging. Like I said, I'd never stand-up paddleboarded before. I didn't really even consider it a mode of transportation when you're carrying gear and stuff. But I mean, I could have loaded it up with another couple 100 pounds if I wanted to. And it was cool. It's like to see that part of the States, you know, this that river there. It's very well fished, but it's much more of a industrial river. You're on the river with 600-foot long barges. You're going through these humongous locks that are not meant for paddle boards. You know, you're pushing a little button at the edge of this lock, and these 60-foot tall gates open, and you don't see any person around there. You just kind of paddle into this lock, and then, you know, hundreds of tons of water displacement happens, and then you keep paddling out. It's pretty unique and special. It was a lot of fun.
We have some locks in Seattle.
We were just talking about
it, and they're built for boats. I can't imagine taking, you know, a paddleboard through there, because you probably feel infinitesimal, right? You probably feel tiny, because the walls are, depending on whatever the level the water needs to get to, they're probably 60 feet high in some spots. You probably felt dwarfed.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was cool. It was a special way to experience that.
I can imagine. Still, lots of questions, and there's a couple in here that I definitely wanted to get to. Go for it, Kim.
Yeah, great question from Nathaniel in the chat room. Question for Ricky. Did an experience with a specific group of people or place dispel any preconceived notions you might have had? If so, can you elaborate?
So let's see if I can. I'm trying to think. All right, so I definitely went into this trip with trying to, even if I did have preconceived notions of them, to just try and rid myself of that and go in it completely open-minded. I guess I was, if anything, I was just going through the South in a couple of the cities in the Midwest, Wichita and Tulsa. I was just really amazed at kind of how I wouldn't say, I'm trying to avoid using the word metropolitan, but not cities that I would plan on going to, and to be honest, I can't wait to go back to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and to Memphis, Tennessee, and Wichita, all these little towns that I don't think are on people's radars. There's really cool athletic communities in all of them, and amazing food scenes, and a lot of really deep history. So I would say, yeah, just to point out two of them. Tulsa, with their Art Deco, they've got the second largest concentration of Art Deco buildings in the country behind Miami. Incredible food scene. And then Memphis, Tennessee, just with culturally, the Black history in that state, and then all of the really green spaces around there, and then a massive freaking river going right through downtown. It's cool. Nice.
There's a couple pictures that I kind of pulled from your Instagram that I felt were maybe metaphorical, or at least maybe had a bigger message maybe. One in particular, this happened, I'm guessing, pretty early on in your journey, where you encountered what looks like a road that went missing. Did this resonate at all through the rest of the trip? Were there any instances where you encountered something you thought would work and then you had to adapt and change, whether that was change your literal route or, you know, change a habit or something that you had done along the way up to that point?
Yeah. So certainly not change my route. I'm entirely too stubborn. If I go a half mile down a road and realize that that I probably shouldn't be going, I'm still gonna go. And some of those, like some of these roads that I went down and found to be washed out or non-existent, I was like 6 miles down. It was like, no, there's no way I'm going back. Like I'm forging on. Like, I'm going to get poison oak. I'm going to get swept down river. I don't care. I'm not going back a half a mile. So that was early on in the trip. That was, I think, in South Carolina. And that one was easy to get around. You just walk down and cross the stream there. But yeah, I mean, it was happening. I had this path that I was on in Reno, Nevada, that got wiped out completely. And I had to carry this baby stroller that I was using for transporting water. I had to carry that across this little river. I was on the Old Western States Trail down at the American River crossing, and I had to swim across that. That was a little bit scary. I was told that I was going the Old Western States course, so the crossing's about 5 miles downstream of where it currently is. I was told that it was much more tame. And first of all, the trail is completely overgrown, and so you're bushwhacking through poison oak and all the way to the river. And then when you get to the river, it's a big river and it's cold. At least this year with all the snowpack. So yeah, I'm a bit too stubborn to adjust my my routine, my plan, my goal.
I also wanted to show this one. I can imagine the various weather that you encountered along the way. Did you have any means to adapt for this? Like, did you pack along extra layers to deal with snow, or did you not expect snow? Or
well, it's hard to see it in this picture, but the sleeping bag that I brought on this trip, I modified slightly so that I could use that as a jacket, and then that kind of white yellow poncho that I'm wearing there, that's also that's a Cuban fiber tarp tent that I had made from Solomon. And so it was cool. It was like, that's South Carolina there in March. I would have had a hard time believing that it snows ever in South Carolina. And sure enough, like 2 weeks into this trip, I was using absolutely every bit of my gear that I had brought with me. Yeah, I mean, there was a few times where it was a bit rough, but it's just, that's the beauty of running, is that you just, if you're cold, you just start running and then you warm up.
And this is the last photo that I wanted to show, because this is the one that I think Kim and I talked about the most, and a lot of people actually ended up talking about.
It's so disgusting.
Yeah, this is, I'm guessing, a stoop of an abandoned house that you slept in.
Yeah.
Why did you not just go to a hotel? Why did you not let yourself?
So far away. Yeah. That was a 38-mile day. I'd made it to that farmhouse at like 9 o'clock at night. I set up my my tarp outside the house because I'd already seen this, and I set up my tarp outside the house, and then just this full-on tornado storm came through, and the tarp wasn't going to cut it. It was raining like it only rains in eastern Colorado and Kansas and Oklahoma, and it just became not an option to sleep outside. So I was considering the possibility that I'd get hantavirus after that one, but I seem to still be alive right now. It was disgusting. That was more disgusting than the guy's house that I stayed in.
Wow. Well, I mean, that
was creepy. I thought there was a dead body around there, but I wasn't going to investigate. and like, yeah, just strange things. Like a couple owls came by during that night, and they sat above me while I was sleeping. This is when I was still outside. They sat above me while I was sleeping and just screeched at me for for a good half an hour. I'm like, I'm not leaving. I'm staying here. You guys are gonna have to deal with me. But yeah, I had a lot of unpleasant nights out there, but they were all kind of interesting in retrospect. You know, I slept through most of them, and yeah, I don't know. As far as like an experience like that goes, I would say that I grew up pretty privileged. I don't come from a wealthy family. We didn't have any money really, despite what my zip code might imply. But I grew up white. I grew up as a male in America. You know, those are 3 pretty big pluses. This was in a way, and it was no intention to be this way beforehand, but it was a way for me to kind of knock that down a little bit and see what it's like to be homeless. And, you know, that's about as close as I can get to, you know, a pretty shitty situation. So in that sense, I was really glad to have that opportunity.
It's an amazing journey, Rickey. Again, I can't begin to imagine what it's like to process the entire journey. It was 5 months long, anywhere from 3,500 to 4,000 miles. I'm sure that there's some leeway in there, given some of the trail distances and stuff that you traveled, plus on rivers. It's inspiring, and I hope that I get to live some sort of amazing journey like this at some point in my life, because it's one of those things that I feel like any human on Earth could benefit from, is experiencing a part of the country or their culture that they're not familiar with, putting themselves outside of their comfort zone, and embracing a bit of that doubt. I'm fascinated by this journey. I know that there is some sort of film or movie project coming from Wandering Fever and from Jared and that whole crew. Will there be a Rickey Gates book? I'm fascinated.
Yeah, lots of people asking if you're writing a book.
I would really like to put this down on paper, combine, you know, my photos, my writings, and then my girlfriend was putting together she was doing a cartoon a day. She's an artist, and she took a really interesting cartooning course for her final year at University of Wisconsin at Madison, and came away with some really amazing cartooning skills. And so she was doing a cartoon a day of this crossing, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to sharing as well. And if that's incorporated into whatever book that I put together with it, then I think that would be really cool. Very complimentary. It's yeah, she captured all the parts of the trip that I was having a hard time capturing.
Would you talk to her regularly, or was she along for the journey, or was it, you know, phone calls or FaceTimes or stuff?
Yeah, so Liz, so I actually went up to Wisconsin to see her MFA show in the middle of the trip. I took the train up there from Kansas up to Wisconsin and then back. And then she was with me for 2 weeks in Colorado, and then off and on in California. And then we'd chat pretty regularly on the phone. So yeah.
That's great. It's an honor to have you on, Rickey, to talk a little bit about this adventure, and I appreciate you sharing some of the stories with us and our audience. And we have still a lot of questions that we need to get to. I want to remind everyone who's watching live or maybe even listening to the archive that we do a post show with our guests every single week. That is a Patreon supporter post show. So if you are a Patreon supporter, we will have Rickey join us for a post show here in just a couple of moments. If you are not a Patreon supporter, consider it. It's as little as $1 a month. It really is not that much. It does help the show continue month after month, week after week. And tonight we'll be able to ask Rickey all the questions that you've been asking during the main show. We have a bunch pulled out to the side here. And we're going to get to one of those actually before we move into the post show. We'll get to one of those here in just a second. I also want to make sure that I announce that tonight is the last night to register for GRVR, which is the Ginger Runner virtual run. Basically, it's an opportunity for us to get the globe together on a very specific day, October 8th this year, to run for 2 hours, or to hike, or to walk, or do something for 2 hours. It's a great opportunity to get people who are active and who aren't active together on the same day to do something fun for literally 120 minutes. And we have prizes and awards for varying things, from eating the most amount. Last year we did we gave the award for the most donuts consumed in 120 minutes while they ran, and that went to Skylar Hall.
Video footage was terrifying.
Jameel Curry and Skylar Hall ended up, well, Skylar ended up winning it because he had something like 19 donuts or something crazy like that. Chris Danucci also won the most vertical gain. Miriam also won the most vertical gain. We have like male and female awards.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff like that. So if you have not registered, please consider it. There's 2 different ways you can register now. Go to gingerrunnerstore.com and you can register for either the t-shirt or the singlet. And you get a lot of other really cool swag. Or you can just register for the digital version, which is there's no swag, but you also get to be eligible for all the awards and prizes and stuff like that.
And just to stress it again, this is for all abilities. We have some really fun elites that have signed up, but also like
my parents.
My 7-year-old nephew is going to sign up. So
is he really?
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome. And my parents just signed up today, and that to me is like that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, we like last year we had Danucci, and we have elites and stuff like that all the time. Yeah. So it's fun. It's basically all levels. And we're going to give away a free entry right now. Because you are watching live and because you stuck with us through this show and got to enjoy these incredible stories from Rickey Gates, we are going to give away a free entry to GRVR. If you are already registered, we will refund the registration fee, but you'll still get your stuff and you'll still be eligible. Yep. So don't hesitate to participate if you have already registered. This one's going to be a pretty easy question. It's going to be a trivia question. And again, I have timestamps in my live chat room. Kim has timestamps in her live chat room. We're going to go for the first correct answer that is typed in the live chat room here. Again, it's a fairly easy question. It does relate to our guest tonight, Rickey Gates.
I don't know the question.
I'll be able to pinpoint the answer because I didn't actually tell Kim what the question was beforehand. I didn't even tell Rickey that we were asking a question. But Rickey knows the answer. But Rickey, don't say the answer.
What if Rickey wants to win the free entry?
Well, if Rickey wants to win the free entry, then he can say the answer. But maybe we can talk after the show, Rickey. We'll make sure that you get registered. No problem. So, Rickey, you're ineligible. Pretty easy, though. It's a pretty easy question. So I feel like the chat room's going to be a flutter.
All right.
What is the name of the city where Rickey started his Trans Americana journey? What is the name of the city that Rickey started? I feel like this is gonna happen. 42. Everyone's saying 42.
Random numbers.
42 is not the correct answer, but I have a feeling that we'll get the correct answer here in just a couple of moments.
Can we say city or town?
We actually have the correct answer already. Oh no. Why can't I get into the chat room?
Is it this one?
There we go. That's what I have.
Yeah.
Same thing. The correct answer was, Rickey, what is the correct answer where you started?
I started in Folly Beach, South Carolina.
So I actually had it wrong. But maybe someone else has it right. Oh, no one has it yet. I actually wrote Charleston down. Rickey, you surprised us. I didn't know.
Charleston is actually not on the Atlantic Ocean. So, so I was going to start in Charleston, and I actually called up Billy. Yeah.
Now we have the correct answers because Rickey literally
somebody
said
said
the answer.
Polly.
Oh, Polly. Folly Beach. I didn't know that. I can't believe I messed that up. So you started in Folly Beach.
Yeah, day one. So I drove my little sister. My sister works in Uganda, lives in Uganda. She's been gone for about 4 years. I've gone to visit her a couple times, but her car has remained at my mom's house for the past several years, and my mom's been bugging us to get rid of it. And I suggested that I take it to South Carolina and try and sell it on Craigslist down there. And so I put it on the Charleston Craigslist in a couple weeks beforehand, said, I'd love to sell this. I'm doing it for a really good price. I'll throw in a $25 discount if you drive me out to Folly Beach and drop me off. And so I sold it on at 9 o'clock in the morning, March 1st. And the gal, she's drove me out to Folly Beach. And my first day was from Folly Beach back to Charleston.
That's amazing.
Beach, when you enter Folly Beach, there's a sign at the edge of town that welcomes you. And it says, "Welcome to Folly Beach, the edge of America." And I didn't know that until I got there. It was perfect. It was the perfect place to start the trip.
Well, I think because I messed that up.
Are you going to do a redo?
I am going to redo. I already know what the question is.
Do you know the answer?
I do. And I think, I feel like I can't mess this one up.
Oh, boy.
So, Rickey, don't say the answer. You're ineligible. Rickey just mentioned the car that he sold.
Technically, Rickey just won that
Rickey won. What is the year and make and model of the car that Rickey sold? I believe this one I do know because you did talk about it.
Oh, and it is somewhere.
I want all three.
The information is somewhere.
The information is somewhere, and I want all three: year, make, and model. So
jalopy doesn't count.
And jalopy does not count.
I think we have it.
Do you think we have it?
Do you have the answer somewhere that I can look at?
Oh, we might already have it. That I
Are
see.
You sure?
This is what I see. Is
That's
this what you see?
Yeah.
Okay. Rickey, can you verify the correct car and year and make and model?
I think it was a 91 Toyota Tercel or Corolla.
I'm gonna correct Rickey.
The 94?
Yes.
Yeah, 90.
According to Rick,
your Instagram.
That's 91.
Based off of Rickey's own Instagram, which I can imagine is not in his mind on every single day. 1994 Toyota Corolla is what
I think that's what we read. So
that's what we read. And that's what we got.
with.
So I'm sticking with the correct answer, belonging to Mr. Christopher Hams.
Yep.
That's what we have as well. Congratulations, Christopher. You had the first correct answer, Toyota Corolla 94. That is correct.
Wanted a 94 Toyota Corolla or a free entry.
Yeah, well, either one, about the same value. But we also, KP Running, congratulations to you too. You did have what I thought was the correct answer to the previous trivia question, but it wasn't the overall correct answer. But we want to make sure that we acknowledge your correct answer to what I thought was the correct answer. But regardless, Christopher, you win the free entry. So please drop me an email, thegingerrunner@gmail.com, and we'll make sure that we get you hooked up. If you're already registered, we'll refund. But if you have not registered, we'll get you registered. No problem. Rickey, I want to make sure people can follow you on social media and follow up with some of these stories, maybe reach out and ask the additional questions and stuff. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, man, if there's one really good thing about having an extraneous E in my name, I nailed Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I'm the only Rickey Gates there. So RickeyGates. And then I've also got my own website that's the same, recount.com. Yeah, I guess I'm always trying to put up fun projects and photos and stories. And I've got a hut-to-hut running trip that's also listed on there. There's still a couple spots left on both of those. One is guided by Jen Shelton. This is right at the beginning of September. And then the other one is guided by myself, and that's towards the end of September. So that's hutrunhut.com. They're a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun on them, and I'm working. So I hope everyone else is having fun.
I mean, if there's anyone to follow, especially on Instagram, it's Rickey Gates. His stories and his photos are fantastic, and he's utilizing the medium in a wonderful way that I feel transcends the medium itself. It's not a lot of, hey, look at this beautiful place I'm in. It's, hey, you want to read the story. There's a story behind every photo, and it's great.
Yeah, so if you guys are new followers on Instagram, make sure you take the time to
read them.
Go back and yeah,
and I mean, I don't know how many photos there are, but it takes you a long time to scroll through them. And if you can go back to the beginning where I thought he started in Charleston, but it's actually Folly Beach, start there and follow the journey. It's a really cool recounting of the last 5 months of Rickey Gates' adventure. We are going to do a real quick post show with Rickey because I don't want to keep him too long. But if you are a Patreon supporter, we'll see you right over there in just a couple of seconds. If you are not, consider it. A big shout out to Brian Sands for making sure that Ginger Runner Live happens throughout the month of August. So thank you, Brian, for the support, and through all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you for continuing to help us make this happen. And again, thank you to Rickey Gates for joining us tonight. It's an honor to have him on the show, especially so recently after his big journey. And we're going to talk about gear, what he used for gear, because I have a photo of his whole layout and stuff, and what's next. We're going to talk about that in the post show with Rickey in just a couple of moments. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next Monday for another Ginger Runner Live.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Ginger Runner.